Today, we're going to talk about something wild, the story of a single mountain that literally changed the entire world. It's an incredible tale of massive wealth, terrible hardship, and how our global economy really got its start.
I mean, a mountain that changes the world? It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, right? But believe it or not, this is a totally true story. We're talking about a real place that for a while was pretty much the most important economic engine on Earth. So let's dive in. Where does it all begin?
Okay, picture this. The year is 1545. We're way up in the Andes Mountains, in what we now call Bolivia. It's freezing cold, and the air is so thin it's hard to even breathe. But right here, in this incredibly tough place, something was about to be discovered that would pull people in from all over the world.
Legend has it that a local guy just stumbled upon it. An unbelievable secret, a mountain that was practically made of silver, more than anyone had ever dreamed of. When the Spanish colonizers showed up, they called it Cerro Rico, which means rich hell. And let me tell you, that was an understatement.
So, with a discovery this big, you don't just get a mine. Nope, you get an entire city, popping up out of nowhere. A real boomtown that would become famous around the world for its absolutely insane wealth. Get this, at its height, more than 150,000 people were living in Potosi. You had merchants, miners, Spanish nobles, all kinds of workers, all crammed into this city built around the rich hill. And remember, this is at nearly 13,000 feet up. That's incredibly high.
And just to put that into perspective for you, Potosi was bigger than London at the time. Yeah, London, a remote city high up in the mountains, was larger than one of Europe's biggest capitals. It was, for a time, one of the largest and definitely one of the wealthiest cities on the planet. But all that wealth, well, it wasn't spread around. Not at all. You had the Spanish elite building these huge, fancy churches and mansions, filling them with luxury goods shipped in from Europe and Asia. And then you had almost everyone else, packed into crowded, miserable living spaces. Potosi was truly a city of extremes.
So you gotta ask, who was actually doing the backbreaking, dangerous work to get all this silver out of the ground? Well, the incredible riches of Potosi came at a terrible human price. To get the huge number of workers they needed, the Spanish set up something called the mita system. And let's be clear, this was a system of forced labor. It wasn't a job you could apply for. Indigenous communities were required to send a certain number of their men to work in the mines. They had no choice in the matter. Just try to imagine it. You're picked from your village. You have to leave your family, your farm, everything. Then you're forced to travel for weeks, sometimes hundreds of miles, through the mountains. And your destination? To work these incredibly long, brutal shifts down in the dark, dangerous tunnels. And the pay? It was so low, you could barely even live on it. And the work? It was just unbelievably dangerous. The tunnels were dark, narrow, and could collapse at any moment. Cave-ins happened all the time. The air was filled with this toxic dust that would destroy your lungs. To get through the day, to fight off the hunger and pure exhaustion, many workers would chew on coca leaves just to numb the pain and keep themselves on their feet. And if all that wasn't bad enough, a new technology came along that made things even worse. It was a way to get more silver out of the rock, sure, but it was also way more toxic. It was called the patio process. So here's how it worked. You'd crush the silver ore into a powder. Then you'd mix it with water, salt, and toxic mercury. And guess how they mixed it all up? Workers had to wade through this poisonous sludge, often barefoot, for days at a time, just stomping on it to mix everything together so the mercury would stick to the silver. Okay, so this silver, mined at such a high human cost, didn't just stay in Potosi. It went everywhere. It flowed across the entire planet, linking continents together and basically creating the first real global economy. In fact, Potosi had its own mint where they made all this silver into coins. The most famous one was called the piece of 8, or the Spanish dollar. And because the silver from Potosi was so pure, and the coins are all made to a standard weight, everyone trusted them. It basically became the world's currency, kind of like the US dollar is today. It was the money everyone wanted. Think about the journey this silver took. It came out of the mines in Potosi, got carried by llamas and mules down the mountains, then loaded onto huge ships, the famous Spanish treasure fleets, to get to Spain. And from Spain, it went everywhere. It was used to buy silks in China, to pay for wars in Europe, and to trade for furs in North America. It connected everything. But having all this new money flooding the world had a really weird side effect. Suddenly, there was just so much silver around that the silver itself became less valuable. And that meant the price of everything else, bread, houses, you name it, started to go up. Historians call this the price revolution. It's basically a long period of inflation. Think of it this way. If everybody suddenly got $1 million tomorrow, a candy bar wouldn't cost $1 anymore, right? It cost way more. This massive change totally reshaped Europe's economy. So, to put it all together, the silver from this one mountain paid for Spain's huge armies, it created a brand new global trade network, and it kicked off the growth of modern banking because people needed a way to manage all this new money. But a boom like this can't last forever. This incredible global money machine, all powered by one mountain, eventually started to slow down. The rich hill, which seemed like it had endless silver, well, it started to run out. Yeah. By the middle of the 1600s, after about 100 years of nonstop mining, the really rich, easy-to-get silver was pretty much gone. The amount of silver coming out of the mountain dropped, and people started to leave the city. Now, mining never totally stopped. They still mine for things like tin and zinc there today, but Potosi's time in the global spotlight was over. But the city's reputation lived on. It was so legendary for its wealth that a saying developed in Spanish, vale un Potosi, which means it's worth a Potosi. People would say it to describe something that was priceless, something of incredible value. The name of the city itself literally became another word for a massive treasure. So today, Potosi is this powerful symbol. On one hand, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site with all this beautiful colonial architecture. But it's also a sobering reminder of the huge human cost that came with all that wealth. And it's an absolutely essential part of the story of how our modern, interconnected world really began. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. The story of Potosi proves that the economic systems we just accept as normal today were often built on really complicated and sometimes really brutal foundations. It kind of makes you think, doesn't it? What's the hidden story behind the money in your pocket right now?